Welcome to this lesson video about how to measure units of length. This is taken from Saxon Math Investigation number 2, and if you're following along in your book, I'm on page 85, and I'll be doing practice problem number 14 with you. That's about halfway down the page. The question begins, this key is about, and I've highlighted the word about because I want to focus on the fact that today we're just measuring to the nearest inch, to the nearest centimeter. I'm not going to the nearest quarter inch. I'm not being very precise. Those are for later lessons. Today's focus is just to measure the length of an object to the nearest inch, centimeter, and millimeters. Before we begin measuring, I want to have you look at my ruler. And if you have a ruler in your desk or your classroom, this would be a good time to look at it as well. First of all, I want to point out here at the beginning point of the ruler, some rulers have a mark with a 0 labeled underneath it, as well as another 0 directly below it and another mark. This is the starting mark or the starting point of this ruler. So when you match up the beginning part of the object with the beginning part of the ruler, that's where you want to line it up, right on that mark labeled 0. That's the beginning point. Now, not all rulers have this beginning point. Some of them, the beginning point is the very edge of their ruler, and each ruler is different. So you'll just have to look and see what type of ruler you have in your desk or in your classroom. Another thing I want to point out is the fact that this ruler, like so many others, has two sets of measurements, two units of measure. This side has the inch measurement, and this side has the metric system, the centimeter and millimeter measurement. Now, some rulers will have it labeled inches and centimeters, and others, like my own ruler, they're not labeled, but you can always tell the inches are much larger than the centimeters. And you'll just have to memorize that. And then whenever you have a ruler and it's not measured, or I mean, it's not labeled, I should say, then you can tell which side is the inches side and which side is the centimeters or the metric side. So how do you measure a key to the nearest inch? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to make sure the inch side is on the top, like I have here, and you're going to move your ruler and you're going to place it on top of the key with the starting mark lined up with the very edge of the key. And this is a good example because the key has a nice vertical straight line, clearly defined edge. And then you would look at how long is the key? Where does it stop? And you'll notice it stops here at this red arrow almost at 2 inches. And like I said, we're just measuring about how many inches long is it. So this is close enough to 2 inches for us to label it as how many inches long? Well, it's 2 inches. So you would write the number 2. And then you have to label it with its label, inches. And in this case, I'll just put a lowercase I and a lowercase n followed by a period. And that's how you abbreviate the word inches. Now let me change pen color. And well, before I change pen color, let me go over here and flip my ruler. I can do that just by clicking this green arrow. And now the metric side is on top, and that's what I'm going to need to answer the next two questions. How many centimeters long and how many millimeters long? So you need to make sure you're using the correct side of your ruler based on the standard unit of measurement that they are asking for in the question. So when you see centimeters or millimeters, make sure the metric side is on top. Once again, I've lined up the edge of my object with a starting mark on my ruler. And we can count 1 centimeters, 2, 3, 4, 5 centimeters in length. So I would, now I'm ready for my pen, I would label this 5 because it's 5 centimeters long, and the abbreviation for centimeters is a lowercase c and a lowercase m. You do not have to put a period after that, however, just the letter cm written right next to each other. So 5 centimeters long. Now, I'd like to zoom in when we're ready to talk about millimeters. Let me move my ruler over here a little bit and let me zoom in very closely and point out to you what are millimeters. These tick marks in between the centimeter I should say, millimeters, and there are 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter. So you could multiply 10 times 1, and that's 10. So 1 centimeter is the same as 10 millimeters. 2 centimeters, so I take 2, we could multiply that by 10 because each one of those 2 centimeters has 10 millimeters in it. Here's 10 millimeters, here's another 10 millimeters. You could say 2 times 10 equals 20, or you might find it easiest of all to simply count by 10. So you could, in your mind, put a 0 after each one of these centimeter labels and say 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on. So let's go back to measuring to the nearest millimeter. Move your ruler to line it up with the edge again, and let's count by tens when we're measuring how many millimeters long this key is. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. It's 50, about 50 millimeters long. So we would write a 5 and a 0 for 50. And the abbreviation for millimeters is a lowercase m followed by another lowercase m. And just as with the centimeters, you do not need a decimal, or I should say a period, after that to indicate an abbreviation. So that is how you measure to the nearest inch, the nearest centimeter, and the nearest millimeters. So do a few practice problems until you get the hang of it. I'm sure you'll learn how to do it very well.